In a world where entertainment is viewed as mindless diversion, only good for momentary distraction, you are about to enter a new world, and you will never view entertainment in the same way again. This is Popcorn Theology.
Welcome, movie lovers and theology nerds, to Popcorn Theology, where we examine films for where they align with our greatest storyteller and the greatest story of all, discussing what to receive, reject, and redeem for common ground, fruitful conversation, and mindful movie consumption. I'm Miles.
And I'm James.
And we're looking at Project Hail Mary, or, as I've been calling it, Project Soli Deo Gloria, or Sola Scriptura. No,
Nice.
Project Hail Mary, directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, which are both known for two really good movies, in my opinion, the Lego Movie and Across the Spider-Verse, which don't seem like they fit exactly with this genre, but I'm pretty high on this. I think they did a good job. And then the story is by Andy Weir, the author of the book Project Hail Mary, and then Drew Goddard developed the screenplay. And Andy Weir also wrote another one of my favorite movies in the last, is it decade? Has it been a decade? The Martian.
Over.
Yeah. The Martian was one of the first movies I took my wife to when we were dating, so a while ago. And that's a great movie. We covered it in episode 382. So again, we're going back to space with Andy Weir for Project Hail Mary. And James, can you give us a bit of a plot summary?
Sure. Science teacher Ryland Grace, played by Ryan Gosling, wakes up alone on a spaceship light years from Earth with holes in his memory. But as the memory returns, he begins to know why he's there and uncovers a mission to stop a mysterious substance that is killing the sun. And, of course, then his endeavor and mission are to find some way to save the Earth, maybe with some surprises along the way.
Yeah. Let's say there are some surprises for those of you guys who haven't seen it.
Hey, well, I'll just say that his road to adventure, it's a rocky road.
Nice. It's this movie I've really enjoyed already. But you know, we have our popcorn ratings and our theology ratings. If this is a bucket of popcorn, is it a stale bucket? Is it fresh or buttered and salted? Just can't get enough.
Well, I'm going to go buttered and salted on this one for sure. This is kind of it's a popcorn movie, and yet it feels like popcorn movie with not just butter and salt, but a little bit of extra intellectual seasoning, if you will. It kind of reminded me in some ways of just watching F1 last year, where F1 obviously wasn't quite as brainy with science involved, but at the same time, it also took on a subject, Formula One racing, which I knew nothing about. I've never been into it. I felt like I was getting educated about that world. At the same time, I was just enjoying a fun but engaging story with some depth, and so it just had that feel good with a little more quality to it, in my opinion. And honestly, I started thinking back. I was like, when have we had a movie like this? You were trying to remember when The Martian came out. Like, when have we had a movie like this before? It's been before the the marvelous era, if you will. When you think about it, really, at least definitely the last decade. And I'm talking about space science fiction. Right, we've had some stuff like The Arrival, or we've had some stuff on Earth, or science fiction like Blade Runner 2049. But when you just think of like outer space science fiction, it's been last decade. We had so many. We had Gravity, The Martian, Ad Astra, Interstellar. We had several Star Trek movies, which they kind of count. They're usually brainier than Star Wars. So I'm not talking about space opera or space fantasy like Star Wars and Dune. I'm talking about science. Usually, back in the 80s, you could shake a stick at all. Yeah, how many we had? They were just all over the place. So I like this movie so much. I'm hoping maybe this is a resurgence. Maybe what's going to fill the void as the superhero era wanes. Maybe we could see a resurgence of outer space science fiction. I think that'd be awesome.
And I was trying to figure out, when you think science fiction, you have to think Star Wars, which is science fantasy.
Yeah,
but this is really like problem solving. Both The Martian and this movie feel a little bit like Castaway, like somebody on a desert island, like they're survival movies.
Yeah.
For my popcorn ratings, yes, it's buttered and salted. I had forgotten this movie was coming out until David in our popcorn theology chat says, "Hey, are you guys ready to record this next week?" I said, "Nope, but I will be." I felt kind of thrown in here, maybe.
Wow.
Feel like almost kidnapped and tossed into this type of plot here, but it's
Your
buttered
Hail
and
Mary
salted
pass.
for me. I loved it. I found myself just sitting there going, I am enjoying this. It's long, 2.5 hours long, but it just didn't feel like it.
I think 246.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't mind it at all.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. It's so beautiful that I began to forget that I was watching something that was made up. You know, it's just great. It's funny, surprisingly funny. Again, kind of like The Martian. If you liked that movie, I think that you'll like this one. And then it's what I've begun to call like a process movie, where you're continually progressing through a problem, growing, problem solving. There's just something kind of triumphant about that, moving from problem to problem to problem. And then ultimately, and what I was surprised with is that it left me morally uplifted and inspired by the end of the movie. And just like, I'm a sucker for a movie that makes me want to be a better man. And it did that for me, and just on a popcorn level. But theologically, you know, it's a smart movie. It brings up a lot of topics. But, you know, if this movie is a theological soda, would we say it's diluted, carbonated, or just cup runneth over? Couldn't talk about it more. What do you think, James?
I think it's definitely carbonated. I don't know if it's cup runneth over, because it's a very focused film, and it's focused on really one character study and one major dilemma. So it gives you plenty to talk about on that front, but not necessarily just an explosion of themes. So it's well worth talking about. I think there's some good prophet, what I call prophet and apostle parallels that we can look at a little while later.
Yeah, I'd go with you too. Carbonated, right there in the middle. It just I really loved this movie, but it's not just a ton to talk about theologically. But what I'm going to see is some good kind of strange Jesus parallels. We'll see, and a real good path toward courage. Something that often challenges us in terms of how we might develop courage in our life. And then there's even just a few in a sci-fi movie. You kind of expect a lot of atheistic, naturalistic philosophy in there. But funny enough, the heart of this movie is so human and so much about connection and communication and the difficulty of isolation. And you also get a few mentions of God that are just worth kind of poking at, that will not long discussions, but will be fun to talk about. But before we drop our spoiler warning, I want to encourage all of you guys to take on the mission to like, share, subscribe to any of our channels on YouTube and all that, and not just for self-service, but we think that we have a valuable mission here to help people engage movies and media with a godly worldview. You can also rate and review. That'll bump things up, and then you can really take the next step. Go boldly beyond where anybody has traveled. Actually, maybe more like 70 or 80 people have traveled, and become one of our patron saints. You could be like an astronaut of cinema. And just for a few dollars a month, you become part of our special group. You get some exclusive benefits, the exclusive Facebook group, and you get to shape the future of our podcast by voting on episodes and get early access to our In the Lobby interviews, like immediate access to all of David's recordings of the Harry Potter movies. He did that all over winter break. He covered them all, and you get those all at once. Otherwise, you got to wait for the rest of the year. But with that, we will drop a few ads, and we will come back with all of the spoilers for Project Hail Mary.
Up in the sky, look! It's a bird! It's a plane!
Cinemagog, The Marvelous Era. James Harleman here, the cinema guy, announcing the sequel to my first book on film and faith. Let's face it, entertainment has changed dramatically since the first book published in 2012, and comic book characters and franchises are everywhere. So I decided to set my sights on superheroes and examine the evolution of Hollywood in this follow-up to the first Cinemagog book. For example, what does Loki tell us about culture's view of God? Why does the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Infinity Saga continually align with biblical themes? In The Marvelous Era, I review each film and show not only how the individual movies express gospel parallels, but each phase essentially reveals a multi-point sermon. I also explore DC, Star Wars, the Monsterverse, and more. Without compromising scriptural truth, we can sift these stories and discover how we might reject, receive, and redeem ideas for personal reflection and Christian conversation. Also, has Hollywood's messaging gotten worse? The book explores ways these marvelous mythologies correspond with conversion, Christian living, church history, and Reformation, but I do also highlight what has been the entertainment industry's darker, indoctrinating decade, as well as toxic fandom and the dangers of immersion in pop culture that just might drown us spiritually if we're not careful. So suit up, assemble, and join me on a journey to the Infinity Saga and beyond. Cinemagogue, the Marvel Us era. Now available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle editions.
Hey, this is David, and if you're listening to Popcorn Theology, it's probably because you're interested in theology or movies, or best of all, both. And that means that you're our kind of people, sharing common interests with our listeners and viewers as well. So why not partner with us and advertise your business or ministry right here on Popcorn Theology? We're looking for great, like-minded sponsors and offer reasonable rates with a variety of formats to get your message out. Remember, our fans aren't mindless consumers, so they'll give you thoughtful consideration. That's a big part of what we're all about here. So, for more information on advertising with us, contact feedback@popcorntheology.com.
And we're back. Spoiler warnings are dropped as we dig deeper or fly farther into Project Hail Mary. And so, James, you thought it was buttered and salted. There were some spoilers worth keeping back earlier. So, with free reign, why is it that you thought this movie was buttered and salted?
Well, I got to say one thing coming out of the gate, and that is that Ryan Gosling carries this movie. Because he has to. 2 hours and 46 minutes, and honestly, he's in almost all 2 hours and 46 minutes. Most of the movie, he's pretty much on screen. It's just him, unless you're counting a puppet.
Yeah.
Not just CGI, but a classic puppet of Rocky. I think the previews show him a little bit. So, and we're into spoiler territory. So there you go. Yeah. Obviously, I mean, the guy's voicing Rocky has to put in some work there too. But this movie really lives or dies, kind of like the Earth, on this singular person's performance. And this is where I think I'll poke fun at David Lee, who once mocked Ryan Gosling for basically just having one emotion. David, come on, he can do more than brood, and here he's proven it. He covers everything from laughter to tears to depression, maybe some brooding. But dealing with that extra fear, friendship,
yeah,
he carries this movie, and I think he's probably one of the actors of this generation. Like he'll be remembered right up there with like I grew up, it was Harrison Ford. My dad grew up was John Wayne. You know, it's just like there's just some strong actors of each generation, and I think
especially the range. You know, you go Barbie movie. And what's the stuntman movie?
The Fall Guy.
The Fall Guy. He was great in that.
Blade Runner 2049, my favorite film of all time.
Yeah. We got a soft spot for Ryan Gosling, but don't ever forget that he was a liability at corner. And Remember the Titans.
Okay, that's fair. And thank God we did not have a cutesy alien. Yeah. And I mean, you could say in some ways he was cute. The voice is cute, but I liked we had an alien that was an alien. Like he even talks about it. It's like he doesn't have a face. Like this wasn't Grogu. This wasn't Jar Jar Binks. This was an alien that felt very foreign to us in so many ways.
It was supposed to be so foreign in that it's supposed to be a life that's built upon a different kind of atomical structure and communicates differently and thinks differently. Yeah. And it was so much fun watching them learn to communicate with one another. Mm-hmm. It was pretty great. Like, especially when he's thinking, "Oh, he thinks I'm stupid," you know?
Yeah.
Like an intelligence that's different. That was very fun.
The only thing where I felt they broke form, if I had to try to pick on, I tried hard to think, what's one thing I could say that I didn't like? 'Cause this movie just was so amazing. I guess the moment when Rocky got into his ship at first felt a little out of character for the two adult characters that they were. He's just sort of like wandering around, that felt like a kids are watching moment.
Yeah.
And maybe a little out of character for in real life, an alien stepping onto another being's ship for the first time, and he's just like, blah, I'm barreling through here like an idiot. That's like, all right.
Yeah, like what fit the character is when Ryan Gosling's character Grace is going nuts because because Rocky is too involved. He can't go anywhere in the ship without Rocky hearing. And that
was great.
I bet there was probably a subplot that they cut about their sleep schedules. I mean, what if Rocky only slept like 4 hours a night and kept waking Grace up? Or, but that was, yeah. And it's just amazing how like, you move from being kind of afraid of this alien, not being able to communicate, to just at the end of the movie forgetting that it's basically a walking, communicating little humming rock.
Yeah.
It's an incredible journey that way.
Yeah. So all the moments of you think this is going to be the sacrifice play. Have you read the book?
No.
Okay, so I hadn't read the book. So the first time, I lost track of time. I didn't know if it'd been 2 hours, 2:45. I had no idea. So the first time when Rocky basically rips out of his suit, I was just like, I think he's going to die for him. And then like vice versa. It was like every sacrifice moment felt was earned and hard and made me believe it was going to be the last one. And so that's a good move.
Well, even the earlier sacrifice where Rocky goes, "Oh, I can give you 2 million kilos of the astrophage. It'll just take me 6 years longer to get home."
Yeah.
And that's a pretty big sacrifice, you know?
Yeah.
And that was that alone was touching.
Yeah. I'm not sure how I felt about the ending. I understand it was faithful to the book, so I have to endorse that because I'm a big fan of faithful adaptation. Yeah. But not knowing how it was going to end, I think I like the feel good. The feel good ending was fine, but honestly, if he'd just gone back to him and they'd had enough, if we had never found out what happened to him, like when he got to Rocky, you knew he'd gotten to Rocky, and then if they'd ended it when they showed that back on Earth they got the probes, I would have been fine with it.
Yeah.
It
felt almost too good. How did they replicate water and sand and everything perfectly?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It felt a little Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy kind of tech, but it was.
And yet I love it. Like I love the ending, but I would have been totally content if it had been a little more sad, or if he'd gotten back to Rocky and they'd had to basically fire probes at both their worlds and kind of just were there knowing they're going to spend their last time alone. I would have been happy with that too. Like everything up to the point getting near the ending was so good. I think any outcome I would have been fine with. So I'm not saying it's a negative, but I found myself thinking I could have ended this. They could have ended this movie 3 or 4 different ways, and I would have been wholly satisfied.
Yeah. Yeah, there really is something to that. Now, probably when we get to our theology section, we'll kind of see why. Because he goes on a journey, but really goes on a journey inside his own heart. Kind of thing. And it's just like, it's true. It sounds cheesy that way, but boy, it's great.
Well, and the thing, honestly, that I thought the most stood out for me, but I'll save it. I'll mention it here in the popcorn area. But the fact that he was finding out he was forced to go.
Yes.
Was the
I was genuinely
moment.
Surprised.
It explained some confusing things about his attitude prior. Mm-hmm. Like it made everything up to that point make sense, even to where I thought maybe some of the acting choices or some of the ways he was interacting or reacting to things. Like I was like, this feels weird. Like no, it's when you understand that, it's like everything makes sense.
It was a good kind of mystery. But
and it's my favorite part for reasons I'll go into later.
The mystery that I was kind of wondering about is what killed the other astronauts.
That's the one thing they didn't answer that I didn't need them to, but that's the first thing my wife asked when we got out. She was just like, that they didn't address that. I was like, you're right.
And I actually had thought, so there's this scene where the astronaut says, I think it's the pilot, says, well, bravery is not a gene. You need to find somebody to be brave for, which I think was a core theme of the movie. And then cut to, I thought he was going to do is she AT&T or T-Mobile? That's the girl who's known for those commercials.
What?
Was the engineer. And I thought he was going to unceremoniously, like looking at those pictures, send her off into space, and then find out later that he was in love with her. And that's why he went or something. That was just one. That's another direction I thought they were going to go. Like that would have been heart-wrenching too. But it was that stuff was great. It's just good. It wasn't entirely predictable, even though morally it got to the place that I want all movies to go to. And like for me, it's buttered and salted. In part, I'm so happy that Rocky, there was very few points in which he felt fake. The puppetry was great.
Yeah.
And then like weird stories. Again, like one reason why I love The Martian and this movie is that it like sucks you in with the scientific problem solving plots, which are solid. There's not really that many. I mean, not many holes that somebody who has just basic science knowledge like me can poke in. But then the plot eventually grips you with stories that are just about connection, communication, bravery, and determination, which is what anybody, even if you aren't on the other planet, needs in their life.
Yeah.
It's great. It's good storytelling.
This is like Armageddon if it was smart.
Yeah. Yep. And then in the end, I think it's kind of neat that this will tie a little bit into theology, but Grace was deflated on Earth when he saw the astrophage, and he found out that it was water-based, and he's depressed because he's like, the only original idea I've ever had was proven to be like nonsense here. And he was searching for significance in his life by having an original idea, right? But by going on this mission that we find out he didn't even want to go, he ended up being vindicated, I think, twice. I think Rocky is a non-water-based life form, and then I think the tauphage might be. It doesn't explain it, though. I could be wrong, but that's just... I think he ultimately is vindicated that there's some kind of life forms that are not based on carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen.
I might have missed that. I might have missed that. I wonder if the book maybe details that more.
I bet it does.
Our listeners who've read the book are going to have to chime in here for us.
Yeah, help me out with that, because
Yeah.
I don't think I have time to read that book. Okay, so that's our popcorn thoughts. Let's dive into our spoiler theology. And
Absolutely.
I drink some of that soda. Oh yeah. Okay, and then so before we get into our main themes, it's just I think I did this with The Martian. It's just in an environment that seems like it's going to be naturalist, atheist. Where are all the mentions of God in the story? And so, like one obvious one is the title, Project Hail Mary.
Yeah.
But it's talked about during one line when Stratt is saying, well, it's like what you would call a long shot, Hail Mary, and they leave it at that. But like, what's a Hail Mary? A Hail Mary is a point at which people are desperate and they are at the end of their personal capability, all their preparation, all their strength, all their intelligence, quarterback throwing a Hail Mary and hoping for divine intervention to win a football game or what have you. And so, like, the movie sets all of humanity in a place where they're desperate for divine intervention and that they're at kind of the end of their lengths. Just kind of a neat thing, not explicitly religious.
Yeah.
Another one thing that's kind of fun is that the main character's name is Ryland Grace, but the whole movie he's called Grace.
Yeah. They know what's weird about that. I was just like, yeah. So you have Project Hail Mary full of grace. I'm just saying.
Movie full of grace.
Yeah, not to mention Ephesians 2:8. We could say the movie is about, for by grace we have been saved. So,
yeah, it's like that has to be. There's something in there. Thank you, Andy, for that little fun bit. So, watch this movie to be saved by grace.
There you go.
And then you have this conversation. Another one of the flashbacks. Grace is talking to Stratt, the leader of this program, and Grace asks her, "You think you'll pull it off?" And she says, "God willing." He goes, "You believe in God?" She says, "It beats the alternative," which is just kind of an interesting thing to throw into this kind of movie, which is about human ingenuity. And there's just this overall awareness of our knowledge, our scientific prowess, our strength only goes so far. And then the alternative, it at least speaks to the idea that the godless life is not more appealing, maybe not more or less true in the plot, but not more appealing. And I just think Andy Weir is an interesting writer in that he puts some of these themes in, even though he tells people explicitly that he's an agnostic, which is like, okay, fair enough. He doesn't caricature these different worldviews. And then one more thing that caught my eye in this story. Rocky and Grace think they're saying goodbye. And so Grace says goodbye, and Rocky says, "What does that mean?" Grace says, "It means I'll see you later." Then Rocky says, "But you won't," although he does.
Yeah.
But goodbye doesn't mean I'll see you later. Goodbye means God be with ye. It's shortened to God be with ye. And that was like, boy, if this was a chapter in a book, we could have had a long conversation about that. What are the implications of alien life to a theological worldview? I think it's kind of fun. C.S. Lewis addressed this. His less known popular space trilogy, Out of the Silent Planet, Paralandria, and That Hideous Strength. I read those a few years ago. And Out of the Silent Planet, he gets kidnapped. It's interesting way, taken to this planet, this main character, and he runs into some beings who have not experienced the fall. And watching somebody try to describe what that kind of interaction is between somebody who's part of a fallen race and a non-fallen race is very fun. And the way they try to describe sin to a alien being who does not know what sin is very fun. And some of the interactions in that book remind me a little bit of this movie. And C.S. Lewis was exploring this before we had even went to the moon.
Nice.
It's just very cool.
Well, to your point about that Stratt is probably my favorite character. I'll talk about that later. But the whole idea of it beats the alternative, I think that's something where, honestly, atheism knows it has a motivation problem. Because Bertrand Russell even, there's some interesting quotes from famous atheists like him, is like, we have to find a way to build a new scaffolding for living, a new scaffolding for ethics, morals, everything, on a foundation of unyielding despair, he calls it. It's like, because he knows, like, if life is meaningless, if we're random cosmic accidents, then the motivation for anything and the courage for anything is, like, how do you build anything on a very nihilistic, ultimately we're the dinosaurs on a long enough timeline. There's nothing to you end your dirt. You're meaning, you come from meaninglessness, you go to meaning. It's the same thing that the writer of Ecclesiastes understands well.
Yeah.
If life is vapor and there is no creator, that's pretty bleak. That it's worthless, and that's why it's the better alternative.
But if there is a God, you can take that xenon gas vapor and turn it into xenonite and make a structure out of it.
That's right.
And save your friends. No, but you're keen on it. It's just, if atheism is true, a grand heroic gesture to save your species is as meaningless as selfishly hoarding all the resources until everybody starves.
Yeah.
It's equal because nothing ultimately lasts. Even if you save the sun, it's going to burn up or die out, freeze out, I guess would be a way to put it. And so,
maybe make way for the next species, right?
Yeah.
Thanos might agree.
Yeah. And so there's just always the God-shaped hole hanging in the back of the plot.
Yeah.
Except for Strauss introduces it here. And it's interesting because even though she does the thing that's not nice in this movie, in the end, what she does ultimately saves the world, saves multiple worlds, and uplifts the audience, like me. That's just overall where I saw God explicitly addressed in the story. But for me, a main point I got out of this was just a very interesting way to think about how a savior who is launched to a new world, so to speak, remembers his life before and becomes aware of the deadly mission given to him. And I say that in that particular abstract way because Ryland Grace has these experiences that I think were very similar to Jesus, possibly. I might borderline on some heresy here or something, but it's a very fun thing to think about. See, Ryland Grace, he wakes up and he doesn't remember his life before. And I just think about, when Jesus set aside his divinity, in a certain sense, the Philippians 2 sense, and he dwells among us as a baby. As a baby, he probably didn't have full awareness of who he was. So there was some point between baby and, I'd probably say 12-year-old, but at least 30-year-old Jesus, where he became aware of his previous existence. Kind of like when Grace is like, "Am I smart?" I love that line when he's trying to figure out things like, "Oh, I'm smart," and viewing these memories, I've just always wondered what that must have been like for Jesus at some point in childhood. Like maybe 10, 11-year-old Jesus is listening to or reading Isaiah 53, where it says that he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. And then at some point, boom, it hits him that I'm the suffering servant. I just couldn't help but think of that, probably because I came into this movie with popcorn theology eyes. But we do know, at least at one point, that Jesus, when he was 12, his parents go to the temple. I think it was for Passover in that one time, and they leave, and he's behind in the temple asking questions, being a little rabbi, really. And they come back to him, and he says, "Why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" It's like, I am the Son of God. This is what he's effectively saying. And then he goes and obeys. And then you even see, very clearly, like in John chapter 17, Jesus, when he's praying at the Last Supper, says, "Father, glorify me in your own presence with the glory that I had with you before the world existed." And so that this fun way that this movie told the story with these flashbacks where Grace is learning about why he ended up on this ship just made me think about what it must have been like to be Jesus becoming aware of his mission. But what seems to be kind of a difference, though, is that Grace learns that he was totally reluctant. He was shanghaied into this mission. And ultimately, through this mission, he learns to embrace the mission that he was forced on, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And ultimately, he kind of arrives at the point that Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, where Grace, by the end of the movie, is embracing not just the letter of the mission, but the spirit of it. Not just for his own planet, but for Rocky's planet. That reminds me of Jesus in Matthew 26, where he says, "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done." And so you just you see a guy like Grace, who's reluctant, kind of a coward, and kind of beaten down emotionally. By the end of the movie, becomes takes on a Christ-like mindset about his mission. And I just found this a good opportunity to go down one of those weird type of discussions that happen in youth group, or what happens when you grow up in church. Going, what was it like to be Jesus' brother at the breakfast table when he's saying, like, Mom, I'm pretty sure I'm the Son of God. She goes, "Well, yeah, let me tell you this story." But I don't know. Am I off base there, or what do you think, James?
I mean, babe, I'm not going to burn you at the stake anytime soon.
Thanks.
I mean, that's the slippery slope when we truly try to grapple with Scripture, which is pretty silent in many ways on obviously what theologians call the hypostatic union. Probably don't talk about that enough in church, just because it's big words, and I know modern day we try to avoid the big theological terms, but it's pretty important, right? How is he truly God and truly man? How is he truly the eternal Son? And even if, in one sense, you might say set aside, right? As Philippians says, he didn't consider equality something to be grasped, but humbled himself, became a servant.
Yeah.
Right? Even interpreting what that means is tricky, right? That one could say, if he was truly two natures, and neither of them were, if he was truly divine, truly the omnipotent Son, and yet also the incarnate Son in flesh, so truly human. So when his divinity, then, he always knew, but in his humanity, like it says, right? It says he grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. So it's like, I was even thinking as you were talking about it too, like, okay, well, is there a difference between wisdom and knowledge? What does it mean that he grew in wisdom? Did he have access as the eternal Son of God to all knowledge? Well, I said, well, he would have to, right? So, but yet he's also experiencing life as a baby and crying, and experiencing life as a kid, skinning his knee, right?
What I've been reliably told, no crying he makes.
Huh. Oh yes, no, there you go.
But I believe just at the same, he had to learn to walk and truly live among us. So I think that there's some kind of ignorance there, but precisely what that is a great mystery. I think it'll be fun to talk to Jesus about it someday. Yeah. Just what was that like? Because it's something I've just always wondered about.
But then he always seems to know everything well before, to some
Yeah.
degree, right? You mentioned
He
him
knows
at
what's in their
12.
heart. Yeah.
He knows it's in people's hearts. He knows his death. He tells his disciples multiple times how he's going to die. He knows who his betrayer is. And yet, then you come to the garden, and we know, like, the eternal Son of God, probably not. It's not just that he agreed to the plan of redemption in eternity past with the Father.
Yeah.
He likely helped conceive the plan that in eternity past. And yet, in the garden, he's like, "Not my will, but yours be done," because he now has a human will that obviously does not want to experience pain, suffering, and death, if at all possible. So, yeah, it does sort of explode your mind.
Yeah, like there was a time in which I entertained the idea that Jesus was, it was like God's soul inside of a human limited body, and he lived the way in which somebody who walks fully with the Holy Spirit would live. So it's like fully spirit empowered, but not his own power, until you read the stories where he says, "Power went out from me." And he knows who it's, and I got rebuked by Scripture, but I was just trying to develop some theology. But it was just kind of neat to see that you have this story of somebody who wakes up almost like a baby, but he's fully developed. So it's like, and has this mission that's really a mission to come and die, so that all of humanity can be saved. Yeah. And he's becoming aware of why he's there. And I think mostly it was just a fun plot device to how do you make somebody who's an expert in a field look at things anew so that you can tell your audience so they can go along for the ride.
That's right.
I just thought it was fun to think.
But you think about, I think about that moment where Rocky says he'll give him the fuel.
Yeah.
And he's saying, like, I'm willing to do this. It's just what I need to do. It's no big deal. But when Rocky when he realizes he's going to get the gift and not have to face it, when he realizes that the cup's going to pass from him, and then he just breaks into tears.
I thought you had said you had made peace with this. That's just something people say.
Yeah. But it's almost the reverse of the garden, right? Because the garden, he's crying, and he wishes that there could be another way, that the cup could pass from him. But it's like the reverse of this movie, because it's not going to. And so it's fascinating. Yeah, no, it's certainly the fact that it makes food for thought and you start chewing on that is fantastic. So that's actually very cool.
It's obviously not what the movie's teaching. It's just where I ran with it, and I was like, I can't think about anything else because it's such a fun idea. And James will pick up the pieces for me.
Yeah. Well, I think about it too. It's like, now, as long as nobody has this image now of like Jesus trying to protest in heaven and the angels are drugging him to get him.
Yes,
that's not what happened.
Him down. And
that's not what happened.
But there had to have been a moment where the humanity of Jesus came to grips with his identity for one, and then his mission for two. And what was that like? Was he reading Scripture? Was it kind of like when you and I feel a call through Bible reading? Was it like a moment of prayer? And then what was it like watching a Passover lamb be sacrificed year after year, and knowing that all of that was designed to point to you and to your suffering, and that the spiritual fate, literal fate of all of God's people rests on your shoulders as your memory of who you are comes back at some speed. Just very cool picture of a Savior. You see a tiny glimmer of Jesus in Ryland Grace.
Yeah. Nice. Well, see, I kind of went lesser with my musings. As I mentioned earlier, I watched the movie and kind of thought in terms of prophets and apostles. And the main thing I picked up was just this idea of the reluctant missionary and the necessity of divine compulsion. If that's the best way I could probably put it. Because when you see him, right, at the beginning of the movie, he lives up to his name, Grace. Let's put it that way. And for those who don't know what grace, right? Grace basically means unmerited favor. Mm-hmm. Like, from his initial recruitment to his delinquent disposition to all the way to the love given him by Rocky, right? His appointment reminded me of Moses who tried to get out of his job at the burning bush and downplayed himself. Right? His later refusal, when he refuses the mission later, that reminded me of Jonah, who rejected his call to Nineveh, and his missteps along the way, trying to catch Rocky's initial notes that he's passing at half speed, his initial spacewalk. They reminded me a bit of Peter trying to become a good follower when he's like walking on water and stumbling and sinking, and just the learning curve is obvious, and then the forcing of Grace's mission. I don't know, it kind of reminded me of the Apostle Paul, who I say unarguably had no say in his conversion. Like Grace, he's just effectively hamstrung and pushed into that mission by Jesus, meeting him on the road to Damascus. Like coming to terms with that and accepting it kind of comes along the way as he's literally blinded and has to go get healed. And right, so there's all these ways that I think, well, as I'll get to in a minute, that I think like Eva Stratt is my favorite character, because I think she's a very godlike character. But think about all the grace that Grace was given when you think about it. Like, he was recruited, even though the unique paper that he wrote is actually debunked in the course of the narrative.
Yeah.
Right now maybe it does. He gets proven later, but he gets recruited based on that. But then when he's working with them, it's like, oh, I'm totally wrong. So he kind of looks like a fool that's been recruited without the right credentials. Yeah. And so his recruitment, he looks like not the kind of person that you would recruit. So he gets Grace in his recruitment. Then, of course, you mentioned Rocky's willing to give up 6 years to give him the fuel he needs. And I think one thing we might overlook is if people on Earth were dying because things are cooling off in different aspects, I think we got to imagine that 6 years could have cost Rocky's planet some people as well. Like, that's actually a huge amount of mercy that Rocky's extending, like that for friendship, right? And then when Grace is even forced, you mentioned it too, he's forced into this mission, and I say that's the unmerited favor of Stratt, because at the end of the day, he gets to become a teacher on an alien planet. Yes, with the best friend he's ever had. So much that he doesn't even really want to go back home. Like, she gave him, by forcing him on that ship, unmerited favor.
And there was nowhere on his planet that he was going to become the man that he should be.
Right. Yeah.
And so, even though it's not nice what they did to him, he is given exactly what he needs to become the man he's supposed to be. And it's like the narrative vindicates her in that sense. And that's what you see when he sends the probes back and she's just kind of smiling. And he doesn't say it he doesn't tell her that he forgives her, but he basically has, and has embraced his mission. Not my will, but your will, Stratt. It's like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Right. And that's where I think we can really identify in a lot of ways with this story and with Grace, because I really, his name's Grace, but it's really he represents us and the grace that we're given, because he, like right at the outset, Scripture says we're all like Grace. We're ultimately selfishly out for ourselves. Like Romans 3 says, none is righteous, no, not one. No one understands. No one seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together they become worthless. No one does good, not even one. Like you think about that moment where he's like, I know, like tons of people will die. I know I have no next of kin. Like, I have nobody really waiting for me here. Like, he knows in every way that he ought to go, and he's like, can't do it.
Yeah, the opposite of those oil drillers from Armageddon, which is another movie I love. I know it's silly. I love it.
Yeah.
And those blue-collar guys say, yeah, we'll do it, or we'll follow you, Harry. But he doesn't have much reason to stay.
No.
He says, no, I can't do it.
And Armageddon's the aspirational story.
Yeah.
I think, and this is too, but it starts by giving us what I think Scripture says we all actually are in the beginning. And that's we're like Grace, not the cool astronauts in Armageddon. And it takes Stratt's forcing, I think, and that's why I said, like, in real life, do I think that a person should force somebody like that? In most cases, no. I would say that's probably not the best idea. Although I can't deny that this was probably the best human civilization decision that could be made.
Yeah, it's utilitarian versus deontological ethics, like the trolley problem. It's
Yeah.
like, there's a version of an answer to the trolley problem that you push somebody onto the tracks to save to stop the trolley to save people. And that's effectively what she did with the trolley problem, is pushing Grace onto the tracks to kill him, because it's the only option she had for Project Hail Mary. It's like, in those circumstances, I find it hard to judge her. It just,
Well, except with the trolley problem, you throw the person on and they die. She trusted, maybe because she was also trusting a little bit that the odds might get beat because she was betting on God, right?
trusting in Grace.
Yeah. He doesn't die. She throws him and he doesn't die. So I like that.
Yeah.
That even is sort of the special thing where I think only we would hesitate to do that as people, but as she reminds me of God, I think something that's overlooked in the Old Testament in particular. I know we focus on Jonah. I even mentioned like the reluctant prophet.
Yeah.
God forces him to go to Nineveh. Lots of people get saved. That's an obvious parallel. But God's approach in the Scripture, especially read the Old Testament, if you're really paying attention, it never comes as a proposition or an option. It's a declaration. Like Noah's not invited to build an ark. He's commanded. Abraham's told he's going to be used. Same as Moses. Like same with all the prophets. It's not an ask, it's ordained. Like they're chosen.
We've been going through, in my small group, 1 Samuel. And going slowly through Saul's life has actually been kind of nice. I've seen him in a little bit better light than normally. But he was reluctant. He was hiding among the baggage when it became time to cast lots to show who God had chosen. He was, I am not an astronaut. And the Lord will thrust us into positions for our own good, for His glory and the good of others. And so, as I was watching this movie, I was getting uncomfortable. Knowing you, I was actually pretty sure you were going to go this direction with this discussion. Well, that certainly looks like monergistic NASA.
There you go. Because it's the same with the New Testament too. Like Jesus reminds the disciples, you did not choose me, I chose you. He says, follow me, and they just do. He knocks Paul down forcibly and turns him around 180 degrees. I don't think living in the kind of democratic American society that we do, very individualistic too, I don't think we like to think about that God in many ways operates more like Eva Stratt than we like to admit, right? Scripture says he raises up leaders and then takes them down. Like he uses men like Nebuchadnezzar to discipline his own people and then humbles that same guy harshly.
Yeah.
Right? And I think the more we understand God's redemptive story, like honestly, we should be thanking him for that. It's like, thank you, God, for usurping my damned will. And I don't mean that as a swear word. I mean that as
the will that leads you to damnation.
My will would damn me. Like, thank you for superseding my hell-bent heart and my direction and shaking me awake while so many others still seem to be asleep, right? That's like, thank you for letting me know your glory and proclaim your glory, even if it might mean various levels of sacrifice. Like that's where I love, I think we ought to have more, like my best days, my best moments in life is when I really feel like God has broken my will and come in and forced me to go a different direction.
Yeah, and the movie ultimately preaches that you will thank the person who had the courage and the wisdom to thrust you into the grand mission.
Yeah.
The grand universal human salvation mission that he's incorporated you into. And I was pretty challenged by that subplot there. And
well, I think it definitely chafes against, it chafes in so many ways.
And he certainly, you take a guy who jokes kind of like an immature guy, it looks like a middle school, maybe high school teacher.
Yeah.
And he comes to a very mature realization about what was done to him. Yeah. And it's like, ultimately, what the promise of God seems to be is that, in retrospect, you will look back and you will have this kind of interaction with God, except for times infinity. You will understand it. And like, ultimately, the edge I liked with this, is his personal journey was like, this movie is about how somebody becomes brave, right? So the divine compulsion that you're talking about, the Strauss compulsion, who's the person who believes in God in this movie, it sends him to the only place in the universe where he'll become the man he's supposed to be, like we talked about. And ultimately, he goes across the universe to connect with somebody based on mission and common pains and common tragedy and courage. When he meets Rocky, it's one person in the universe who has shared mission. This is the like that little diagram, the Zenonite diagram. So cool. Oh, you're from this place, and here's what's the bridge that they called? I forgot it. The bridge of the astrophage. It was hard to learn all this vocabulary off of one sitting. And they
Shoot. Yeah. Starts with a P. Got it. Whatever.
I want to say Peloton, but I don't think that's right. They have a shared
It was the Pilates. Go on.
Yeah, the Pilates trail. They have a shared sense of tragedy, both in knowing that their planet is dying and losing their crew, and they both have a shared need for each other. Like there's the line in the movie where he's talking about how Rocky sleeps, and it just goes, he's totally paralyzed. He needs somebody to watch him sleep, and it's like you could. That's all. That could be a line in this movie. Is everybody needs somebody who can watch them sleep. Now we think that's kind of like creepy. We have all these connotations, but you need somebody who has your back when you're paralyzed in sleep, because we are weak enough that we need each other, and that goes back all the way Genesis 2. It's not good for man to be alone. He finds a helper suitable to him. It's not a wife figure, but Rocky is the helper suitable to him. And then ultimately, there's several Bible verses about how God will test us to build our character. Just one among many that I like is James chapter 1. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect, complete, lacking in nothing. And so this movie, while Grace is solving these problems, he is maturing into the man he should be. It's just very cool. It's just, and I just left uplifted. I like this movie.
Yeah. Well, and Stratt, that's what I was going to say, going back to that, like Stratt's universal kind of unilateral decision puts Grace on a path that will effectively, I think I'd use the word sanctify. Right? It's a sanctifying journey for him. He is put on this forcibly by the boss, and that it
by his
purifies
Lord.
him. It refines him. Well, after the vodka, it refines him. But it makes him the man who will live out John 15:13, right? There is no greater love than this, that a man should lay down his life for his friends. And that's why this movie lands, by the way. Right?
Yes.
It's a tale that is ultimately about the greatest love. Of course that's going to be a tale that wins, right? They mutually each tries to lay down their life for their friend. And
Several times.
how do you beat a movie like that? It's Jesus says, no greater love. Well, no greater story, unless you just tell it badly.
Yeah, they were such heroes, and it's just so cool to see Ryan Gosling and Rocky, it's like a buddy cop movie, but they just repeatedly were willing to lay down their life for their friends. Like I love it when he's talking about how he named this new form of life that gets rid of the astrophage, and he knows that Rocky would not like the name. But that shows you that they know each other.
That's true.
And man, when Grace wakes up and he sees the ash around the ship from the burning of Rocky, knowing that Rocky was burning up as he was bringing his friend to try to bring his friend back to life. And like you said, I didn't know if he had survived or not. And there's no greater love than this, than a man should lay down his life for his friends. That encapsulates his whole journey in this movie, and it's why it's great.
Yeah,
it's great.
What? Because I think we all, like, I think about their sacrifices for each other. It's like, well, I haven't been in that position, but I'd like to think God's building me into somebody that would step into that moment if and when it happened. Yeah. But I'm even willing. It's like, man, am I really there yet? Am I even like the journey from reluctant and even actually wanting to not go to then what he becomes is such a huge deal. And you mentioned I was going to bring it up, but one reason isn't just theology. Another reason is just personal, because to make a long story very short, and some people already know this because I've talked about it before, I was willing to become a Christian, kind of like Grace was willing to go be part of the project. But I was like, but I'll never be a pastor. God basically had like the plant, like the place blowing up. God kind of had to blow up my world to do a number of things to get me forced onto his ship.
Yeah.
And even as a pastor, I'm still not sure I'm not sure if I'm still not quite looking like we see grace at the end of this movie. But I hope that as my story continues, that he's taken me and done some breaking on me, and he's working on me. So this movie, I think, it's a personal note as well, just because it reminds me the Jonah aspect reminds me of me.
Yeah. I hope that when the time comes, I will have run the race like this guy came to. And that's why, boy, when you put on your popcorn theology eyes for a movie that is not trying to teach that lesson, but it will challenge you if you are being mindful, watching the movie with Jesus.
And that's why I think the ending actually does work, even though I wrestled with it a bit. Because even though, and I'm glad that Weir wrote it into his book, because really what the ending is almost a vision of heaven.
Yeah.
He's got a tailored environment for him to live and to now really live out his gift, which is teaching. He's got excited students, right? It's almost it's a slice of paradise for grace at the end. And so that happily ever after ending is another picture of the gospel. And like after you fight that good fight, like what happens? You wake up and you're with that friend, and you're actually with the greatest friend, Jesus, and you're in a slice of paradise that's been prepared for you.
Slice of paradise. Man, that's close to me now. For me, when I think of heaven, I think of a mix between the meal in Hook with the Lost Boys and the last scene of X-Men: Days of Future Past when he comes back and all of the sad things have become untrue. That's what I picture. Man, this might add to it. It's like a sense of, because he's got work in this too.
Yeah.
And I guess that could have been a lightning. We didn't actually drop a lightning round. So I think
we did enough.
I think I have one thought though I like about this is I think that this movie will show you how a Christian from a different background, maybe a different race, different culture, can inspire you to be a better servant of Christ, because both these guys are foreigners to each other and are on the same mission. And you have, I think, even in an age where immigrant stories is a real issue in our country, you go, there really is a certain amount of beauty here in the unity and diversity, like being unified for a grand mission with your diversity can help you accomplish great things. And it's like a little picture of the church of not just it's Jew and Gentile. The dividing wall of hostility is down. They might have met under different circumstances and fought each other. Yeah. But everybody was battling for survival. And ultimately, when you guys figure out what your real mission is, you can team up and become family like they did.
Well, for that you got to go watch the '80s movie Enemy Mine, but that's a whole other issue.
All right, I got to put it on the list again. Thanks, James. But I think that's it for my Project Hail Mary thoughts. Do you have anything else before we sign off?
No, I'd just be really curious for those who've read the book and may have extra insights to
help us out.
Yeah, add those in. Let us know what we may have missed, or maybe extra things the book fleshed out that even have more parallels.
Yeah. So as you are watching this movie again, because I think you should, it's good, or reading the book, let us know as you keep engaging media and movies from a godly worldview. And remember, you are not a mindless consumer.
Thanks for watching this episode of Popcorn Theology. For more content, subscribe on YouTube. Follow and interact on social media to help broaden the conversation. Check out our archive of past episodes at popcorntheology.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. And consider becoming a patron saint by supporting us on Patreon, which lets you interact, influence, and enjoy exclusive bonus content.